Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams. And today, I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment. In today's episode of the Power of Design podcast, I'm talking to Joe Youannas. Joe is a real estate investor and developer in Charlotte, North Carolina. The first time I met Joe about a month ago, we had a very deep and interesting conversation, and I really wanted to have him on the show. During this podcast, we talk about his upbringing, his career, beliefs, and exciting commercial real estate developments he's working on in Charlotte. This is my conversation with Joe. Hey Joe, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you, Jack, for having me here.
No problem. Is this your first time on a podcast?
Incidentally, this is my second one in about 2 months. I've never been on a podcast before, and you were the second one to ask me, and I don't know why I agreed.
What was
to
the
it.
first one about?
The first one actually was about about my faith, and it was about the church.
Yeah.
What is the church? What are the roots of the church in the Bible? And it was a conversation that I was actually doing more of the asking.
Yeah.
And the person I was interviewing with was doing more of the digging in the Bible and sharing what the origins of the church are from a biblical standpoint.
Yeah.
And where it has become today and how it is different than where it was.
What was the main thing that you learned during that podcast?
How incompetent I am. Well, from a content standpoint, it really put a framework to a lot of what I knew and didn't know about the church from a biblical standpoint and from where it is today.
Yeah.
That we see around us buildings and call them church and this and that.
Right.
This is the content I learned quite a bit. From a podcast standpoint, it was interesting because a podcast is really different than a presentation where you stand up in front of a crowd and speak. This is more intimate. I enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's a lot more intimate, and for me, I feel that I'm an introvert. So podcast really fits who I am because I'm really good on one-on-one conversations. When I'm with a crowd or speaking to a lot of people, I can do it, but I can feel that I need to make an effort to make that happen. So podcasting really fits me well. And at the beginning, it was hard because, I was nervous thinking about people, if they're going to understand what I'm saying, my accent, or they're going to judge me or things like that. But, it's been more than 50 episodes. So, for me now, it's just another conversation.
And I've ran into several people that highly spoke of the podcast. Nice. Mostly industry people, but it's I've listened to several and I've quite a bit enjoyed them.
Nice. Well, man, I'm very excited to have you. I know you're doing very exciting things here in Charlotte, and we had a chance to meet for the first time and talk very deep.
Yeah.
So I want to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, our conversation was unexpected, where it started and where it began.
I know.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very intriguing. I hope it was for you too, but
it was.
From my perspective, I mean, you kind of opened up my mind to things that I could not think of.
Good, man.
From an architectural
You did the same to me.
Thank you.
Joe, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Well, I'm currently growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I continue to grow up, and contrary to what some people think. But before that, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, where my parents immigrated when I was 8 years old.
Where did they come from?
Well, I was born in Egypt.
Okay.
So I lived in Egypt until I was about 8 years old, and then Toronto, and then more recently here in Charlotte.
Wow. Do you remember your childhood in Egypt? In Egypt?
Yes, particularly because we would go back and forth quite a bit after we immigrated, visit family and vacation and so on. So the memory kind of continued. Life is completely different there, so it's very vivid, the contrast between Canada or the US and Egypt.
Yeah. What do you think are the main differences?
Well, for starters, the culture is completely different. Egyptian culture is a few thousand years old, and it has not been as, not tainted, but it hasn't been meddled with as much as North American culture.
Yeah.
North American culture is the confluence of many cultures, immigrants from all over the world coming to, whether it's US or Canada. So you create a culture here that you can't see anywhere else. But in Egypt, it's a very strong, deep-rooted culture.
How strong? Explain that to me.
On every front. I mean, your interactions socially are completely different. What you say could mean different things. Just like any other, I mean, if you were to go to China or Colombia, or you imply something and you say it a different way.
Yeah.
From a business culture, business is completely different there than it is here. It's again more. There's rules that are unwritten, whereas here the rules are more black and white.
Yeah.
Whether it's business or politics or even religious, there's unwritten things and you got to know it. I mean, you can't know it without being a part of it.
Right.
So, if I were to be thrown into that culture, it would not be as quick to learn as it would be if I was thrown into a Western culture.
Sure.
Where it's more black and white.
Yeah. But when was the last time you went there?
About 3-4 years ago.
When you go down there, do you feel like, even though you may not like exactly fit because you grew up in a different culture, that you feel that you belong there, that's your race, your place, your heritage?
Yeah, this is my people.
Right.
This is we look alike.
Yeah.
But I still feel like a stranger.
Yeah.
I mean, I go out on the street and even the way I dress is different than the way people are dressed. So I walk into the same store with my cousin or my friend, and people will know I'm not from here.
Yeah.
Especially if I open my mouth. I speak Arabic, but it would sound different than any local. Really.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience in 2019 in December, right before COVID hit. We went to Spain, and it was my first time going to Spain. And Colombia, that area of South America, is a mix of Spanish immigrants, slaves from Africa, and the Native Americans, Indians that live in that area of the world. So it's a mix of those three races. But we, at least my culture is mainly Spanish. A lot of things we have the architecture is very Spanish. We speak Spanish. So when I went to Spain, it was a shock because I started looking at people and they even look like my family, like my cousins, my aunts. And there was this thing that is my first time here, but somehow I feel like familiar with this thing.
Yeah.
Like my genes know that I come from that place.
Yeah, there's definitely that strong connection, the personal connection with the place, with the people. I may get along as friends with North American person more than I would with an Egyptian living in Egypt.
Yeah.
But really, to my roots, I'm more connected to an Egyptian than I am somebody that I get along well or better with here than I do with an Egyptian.
Yeah.
So, I think that's just part of human nature.
Interesting. So you guys moved to Canada. Tell me about that experience growing up there, going to school.
Yeah, that was definitely a big shock because my English was very limited as an 8-year-old. I spoke English but very limited. Being thrown into third grade was that was a big change. Thankfully, it was a really good school. My parents put me and my sister in a Christian private school. It was really small, very intimate, and it's like they just, the teachers and most of the students were just, they treated us special.
Yeah,
and
they
different.
made you feel good.
Matter of fact, I interact with some of these people today,
Wow.
and they were the first acquaintances that I made when I was 8 years old. I saw one of them who happened to be here in Charlotte now. She and her husband moved to Charlotte, and she was at our office this afternoon.
Wow.
She's an artist. She hand sketched some of the houses that we're designing.
Yeah.
And she came to deliver it this afternoon. She was one of the first that I ever became friends with in Canada and then her parents also, family friends, and look up to them. They've been role models to me. So thankfully, where we landed and where my parents put us from a schooling standpoint was a place where we got nurtured and taken care of. Otherwise, it could have been the opposite.
Oh, sure.
If you're thrown into a new culture and thrown into everything different,
Yeah.
you get picked on, you get beat up, and that
Right.
could scar you for life.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge step to be a first generation immigrant, because you don't know how the other culture is going to react, and you want to feel accepted, and you want to assimilate the culture. You come to just do your best and trying to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I had, when I came from Colombia. I was 23 years old, so I was an adult. My English wasn't very good, but I remember for the first years, you want to fit in so desperately. You want to speak well, you want to learn the system, you want to, you want to contribute, you want to help, and I felt that when I was practicing architecture, and I remember many times when I was in meetings or business situations where I will see a different angle, but I was like, I didn't say anything because I thought I was missing something. That, well, maybe I'm not getting the point, but I really think it should be this way. But I never said anything. And it took me years until I realized, man, no, that's what I bring to the table. Because of my background, because of how I think, that different perspective and point of view is what I bring to the community. That's what diversity means.
Yeah.
That's what we all need. And it was a breakthrough for me that, I started, I speak up now because I know I might not be right, but there might be something in there. I'm not holding myself back. But it was because I wanted to fit in that I was kind of holding myself back.
Yes, I think diversity is something that's preached, something that is aspired towards, because we, putting it on paper, diversity could look really good, but to actually practice it takes a lot more than just from a theoretical standpoint. All this to say that diversity is what makes our culture, makes our businesses, our society thrive.
Yeah.
And if we embrace it and see the benefit in all the different cultures and diversity of cultures that come together, that's where we could really add synergy and improve.
Sure.
And help each other out.
Yeah.
But it's a me only world, very self-centric world in a lot of cases, and I only see what's in it for me. Where really, I'm not saying I shouldn't be looking out for myself, but you know what? There could be a confluence of benefit for everybody. It may be to some degree at my expense if you benefit from an interaction or a business relationship or whatever. But on the long run, a win-win is really where we could thrive as individuals and as a society.
Sure. And especially here where the The diversity and migration story is hundreds of years old. It's been happening for generations, and where anybody is today is because somebody did something 100 years ago, 200, and you can trace back the effort, paying the price to improve, the life of the next generation by somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is amazing about this country, that what happened to me just recently happened to people 300 years ago, and it's still possible, and it's alive. That's a reality in my life, and I live it every day, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity. Now I want to be of instrument to help others do that. Part of what I went through was I didn't have somebody close to me giving me advice, showing me how to do things, explaining shortcuts. I had to learn everything on my own, because I knew people, but nobody close that really care about you. They say, hey, pay attention to this, I don't know, and basic things like start investing in this way because it's important for you. Mm-hmm. Nobody told me that.
Right.
Or things related to my career. Hey, if you do this, you can, become licensed doing this way. And I had to learn everything on my own. And now I realize just the right information at the right time for a person that needs it could mean, a huge change in their life. It's not all about, money or opportunities. Just information, mm-hmm. Man, it's amazing what you can do, giving somebody a specific moment in time, the information they need to take a big step in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where our society really is where we lack, because I see somebody that is new. I don't take the time to find out who they are, what they do, what they're good at, how they could be an asset to society. But how can I help them?
Right.
If I just find out how I could help them and don't worry about how they're going to help me, no doubt there will be benefit for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
So, it's a very fast-paced world that I am a part of as well. My life is very fast-paced, too fast. And if we just take the time to pause for a moment and see, the person sweeping the floor or cleaning the bathrooms, and say, hey, where are you from? What do you do? What's your background? You could learn from them.
Yeah.
And it may be weird because nobody's ever asked them before, and they might look at you funny, but just pause for a moment, ask them, hey, who are you? What's your name?
Yeah.
Nobody's asked their name before.
How do you feel today? What's going on?
And genuinely ask it.
And you may have like a lot of solutions for their problems, but if you don't know their problems.
Yeah, their problem could be $10. Their problem could be they don't have somebody to smile at them. And if you could be that person just to smile at them and keep them from suicide or from something, the problem is I'm too fast-paced.
Right.
I don't take the time to just pause and say, hey, look at that person walking, or walking down the hallway,
right.
Or sweeping the floor, or whatever it is. Just take time to pause and care for people around you, and it will change your life. It changed my life.
100%.
Somebody taught me how to do this. I'm not naturally that way. And I don't say like I do it all the time. I like to do it all the time, but that's part of where I'm growing. That's why I'm continuing to grow up.
Right.
I'm not already grown.
Yeah. So you're learning, thriving in Canada, growing up. Tell me about, going to school, friends, getting your education.
Yeah. So in school, I wasn't always the greatest of students. I did okay. My sister excelled way past me all the time, grades wise or what have you. But I did okay. I wasn't. But then I found out when it came to certain areas where I excelled, it just came to me naturally, and I did really well with it. For example, math was never I was okay with math. I would say I was better in math than most other subjects. But then I found out, you put a dollar sign next to a number, and all of a sudden I could make sense of it a lot more than it was just, a dollar, a one,
Right.
a one or a two. Somehow it put the coin in my mind, and I could say, okay, if you put two ones together, it gives you a two. So I guess in that regards, I'm a visual person. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I was never really that strong in school, but I enjoyed certain things. And looking back at even when I was still in Egypt, I have very, very vivid memories of certain things. One of them is a construction site. One of the images that I always look back when people ask me, what's your career path look like and how did it start? I always could look back at a construction site, at one particular construction site that's in my mind, where the workers were mixing concrete by hand, because that's how they did it back then in the part of the country that I grew up in, where they mix the cement, they mix the sand, they add the water, and you have multiple guys using a shovel to mix it. And that vivid memory in my mind is still it's like a picture that's you can't get rid of.
Yeah.
And to me, that's almost like the birth of my career. That's where I was initiated into where I'm at today. I was very fascinated by the fact that, this is an old dump site that people just threw their trash in, and then somebody came and put some concrete down and started building with bricks, and now it's a big building.
Yeah.
That fascinated me. That, you go from nothing to this massive building, and then people moving in and they're living their life. They're hanging their laundry out on the line. They're hanging their garlic and the onions in the balcony. And this is what happens when people do construction.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's I think where the birth of my career began.
That's awesome. So when once you start growing up and people start thinking about, what are you going to be or what are you going to do, when you grow up, you will say, I don't know what, but it's going to have to be building buildings, or how do you find a path to get there? Because there are many ways to do it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And the path that I took was not the one that I envisioned or was planning on. Again, going back to my culture in Egypt, being a Christian and a minority, you had to become a professional if you're gonna do anything of career wise.
Yeah.
So you had to become a doctor or an engineer or a pharmacist, and you go down that path and you earn a living. You prove yourself that you're capable. And so that's kind of the mentality that most Egyptian parents kind of brought their children up in. My dad was a little different. My dad's a pharmacist, and he obviously a professional, but he's a very astute business person, and he taught me business at home. He wouldn't come home and talk pharmacy.
Yeah.
He would come home and talk business. And for some reason, a lot of times it would revolve around real estate or buying and selling and creating something and selling it for a little profit and repeating it. So I think I was educated around the dinner table more than I was at school as far as my career path is concerned. Where else was I going with this? So yeah, professional. I thought I would become an engineer. So I mentioned my dad a few times. My dad's a role model to me, not just from a business standpoint, but from as a person. I looked up to him, and he taught me a lot of things. Continues to teach me a lot of things. He's my business partner in all of the businesses that I'm involved in. The other role model when I was growing up, and he still is my role model, is my uncle. He was a structural engineer, and he'd talk about a job site. He would show pictures, and that was instant interest.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved looking at it. And just to, see mud on his shoes or on his jeans or whatever. And that was intriguing to me. So early on, when people would ask me, and really early on, I was still young, they say, hey, what are you going to do when you grow up? I say engineer. I knew it wasn't pharmacy. My dad was a pharmacist, but I don't think he was too fond of pharmacy as a profession. He did it because that's what provided for our family, but his real interest was business because that's what he always talked about. So I knew I wanted to do something construction related because of those vivid memories that I have of buildings. My role model being my dad, business, my uncle in construction related. He's a structural engineer. I would talk to him, and I still continue to talk to him about structural stuff. Why is this column this size, and why is it concrete and not steel, and why is this cracking, and why is this not working the way it should? So I'm always sending him pictures or picking his brain, even as professionals.
Sure.
I send him pictures and ask his opinion.
Is he in Canada?
No, he's in California.
Okay.
So he practices structural engineering. He builds large warehouses, designs large warehouses for Amazon and Walmart, and so 1 million square feet plus, large tilt-up buildings. So he's very knowledgeable, very talented, and very hardworking. His work ethic is one of the things that I kind of try to model after. So anyway, that's part of my path, my environment, my parents, my uncle, the places I grew up in, and then my interest. I mean, what made me as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old stop and watch people mixing concrete for half an hour or an hour and watch them lay brick. Most people would find that boring.
Yeah.
But I actually found it very fascinating, not because that's just my makeup, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's amazing because it's such an important part of human life to create the spaces for human to perform their life, live, play, work. So there are a lot of people that need to be part of that process. Designers, engineers, real estate, bankers. Somebody needs to have the vision. There are a lot of people, but we're all trying to solve the basic need of shelter that we need because we need shelter to do what we need to do. It just becomes very complex once you get to do very different uses, very different specific needs that this structure needs. And somebody needs to put that together, thinking about the person, make it feasible, economical, nice, so you can enjoy it, so you can be part of that. So I found it very fascinating as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you boil it down to that really what you and I are involved in is just boiling it down to shelter. That's all we're working towards. That's a common goal that you as an architect and I as a developer have. We're just trying to create a shelter for either an office or a family or a person to just live in. If that's our goal, you and I's goal, and then you mentioned a banker, you mentioned an engineer, and so on. If all of us have that as our goal, my goal should be somewhat set aside. The money that I'm trying to make or the fees that you're trying to charge, I'm not saying set them aside as in ignore them. They're still part of an integral part of the mix. But that's not my priority. That's not what I'm really after. It's not what you're after. What we're both after is create that shelter.
Yeah.
That basic need for a human being, a fellow human being. And if that's our focus, form, function, when you're designing, cost, benefit analysis that I need to do as a developer, all of these things will find the right place when you're designing, when I'm building it, to meet that fellow human being's basic need of shelter.
Yeah.
And then synergies can be created. Like, you're not after the most beautiful building because it's got your name on it. I'm not after the most profit out of building this project. We're after something else, and that is a common goal of providing shelter to our human fellow being.
Yeah.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
Tell me about what you do today as a developer. What kind of projects do you work on? How do you decide what to work on? And then what do you specifically bring to the table as far as your skills and your talents to make that happen?
Sure. So we have several entities. One of them is a coffee business that we're a part of, as you know.
Which is good, yeah.
So we've kind of meddled into a lot of things, but we're somewhat of a hybrid in that we do, I should say an anomaly, because we're a hybrid. We do some residential and we do some commercial. Mm-hmm. So our residential arm is Main Street Properties and Development, and we do kind of anywhere from condos, townhomes, to single family, custom homes, high-end subdivisions.
Yep.
We do the vertical construction as well as the horizontal. We'll come in, take a site, develop it, and then build it out. Then Blue Jay Investments, our other entity, is our commercial arm. And that's where we do the land development for residential or commercial projects. And then right now we're finishing up Station West, which is our adaptive reuse project on the west side of town. We're still working on renaming that area with the local developers, but it's in the Fremore West area. And then we have other projects that are in the works for new construction, new commercial development.
How did you come across that Station West project? How did you? So when did you realize? Okay, I'm gonna make something here. This looks interesting. What were those cues that made you move forward?
Well, Station West is by far the most intriguing project that I've been involved in, and it's become somewhat of a little baby to our family. It started off actually as not an offshoot, but we were doing some single family construction on the west side of Charlotte. And at the time, I mentioned that my office was at Starbucks, mm-hmm. and that's where I sat all the time and did my work. And we were sort of slowly outgrowing my space. And I started looking for office, and I was having coffee with a friend who he's a broker, had just done a deal with him. He said, "So Joe, what are you looking for now to buy?" I said, "Well, I'm actually just looking for an office somewhere to, for our use, for our business, and then rent out the rest of it for other real estate professionals so we could be around each other and create that synergy." He said, "Well, I got a warehouse for you. How would you like to buy a warehouse?" I said, "Not quite what I'm looking for. I'm looking more for an office."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, come look at it." And then I was just like trying to be nice. So I said, "Well, what's the area? Send me the address. Text me the address and I'll look it up." So he texted me the address. I looked it up, and it was right around the corner from a residential project that we were doing and finishing up. And I saw that was kind of the next big thing in Charlotte, just based on our experience with that little project. So I drove around, and sure enough, it was two warehouse buildings next to each other on the corner. And I'm driving. There's a chain link fence around the whole site, barbed wire, razor wire on the top of the fence. And it was a sketchy part of town. It was not where you want to be at night. But I knew that already. And I knew that the tide was turning. And then I'm driving, looking at it, taking a video of it, showing it to my dad over FaceTime. And then I said, yeah, we got to do this project. Let's figure out how to do it. And it was not in plan. We were planning on spending half that much money on the office. Mm-hmm. But this skyline view, proximity to town, to uptown, close to the airport. I mean, it had everything going for it.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
really
said,
nice.
this is where we need to be. We got to do something to make this project work. Whether it's for an office, I'll stay in Starbucks just to do this project.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, it was a love at first sight, which I don't fall in love with my projects, but this one was special. So anyway, we end up buying it. And before we even close on it, I had a list of tenants that I wanted to target.
Yeah.
And I had, specific names of tenants that I wanted to come join us. And then some other categories of tenants to bring into as tenant mix. Said, eventually this is going to be a real estate hub for our business where we have architects, engineers, maybe surveyors, maybe some contractors. We did construction, so, contractors was kind of part of it. And then we want to have a food and beverage component. Because if I'm going to be living there, working there, every day, I want to have good coffee. I want to have good food so I could just pop in and be able to go sit and meet clients in a coffee shop or something.
Sure.
So, I mean, it was just a vision that I had, and I don't think I ever sketched it on paper, but I wrote down what I could on spreadsheets, lists of people that I want, and I envisioned where everybody would be in the buildings. The only missing part was parking. It had less than 70 parking spaces. Mm-hmm. And that was not enough to park what I wanted to do. So it backed onto a railroad track and then a concrete plant. So I'm like, well, I don't even know who to call to talk about the railroad if we were to ever rent it or buy it or whatever. Somehow somebody connected me with the railroad company that might own it. It was different. So I called it. They said, no, we don't own that. CSX owns it. And no number for it. So I dig it up, find real estate department. It ended up being probably a 1-year process of negotiating and talking, and eventually we're able to secure the parking, and then it was a viable project.
Nice.
Then my my creativity could roam wild, and I could just envision whatever I wanted to for the project.
It's a really nice project, man. It's really nice. It has a really good vibe, and so how close are you to finish 100%?
We're hoping by the beginning of January, beginning of next year. So probably another 2 months or so. And that will really be the cherry on top, because that's where we're finishing the outdoor component.
Yeah.
The buildings are more or less finished, and now we're creating a courtyard between the two buildings. That's really going to be the life of the project, and hopefully the life of the community.
Yeah.
Not just tenants, but anybody walking down the street, coming for coffee at Backdrop or whatever, sitting down and being able to just sit outside and have a casual interaction with a person that they know or don't know.
Sure. So what do you think is the skill or talent you bring to that whole process that helps you enable that process and keep it moving, because I know that's not an easy task. There's going to be a lot of, there's always problems along the way. There are unexpected situations. You're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of decisions. What do you think do you have personally that you can make that happen?
Not a whole lot other than a vision. I think back, we've owned the project for that property for 4 years or so. I don't have a whole lot of skill in anything that's being done right there, other than I envisioned what it could look like.
Sure, that's important.
And somehow an architect was able to take it, a landscape architect, a civil engineer was able to scan my brain and draw it up. And then I look at it and I'm like, that's exactly what I envisioned. Now start getting into the details, and then I get excited and I tweak this, tweak that, and then they would bring things that I didn't even envision. Like, oh man, you took my idea and you made it 10 times
to the
better.
next level. Yeah, man, that's the power of design.
Exactly. That's what it is, and it's really synergy where the architect didn't own it and I didn't own it.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat around the table. I shared my vision, and then they took my vision, internalized it, started sketching it, but they didn't make it like, this is going to be my masterpiece. Let me draw the Mona Lisa for you and write my name on it. This is, what's your vision, Joe? And then I didn't take ownership of the vision either. I just said, how can you make it better? It doesn't have to be exactly the way I envisioned it, although a lot of what I envisioned is now a reality. But a lot of what's there today is an embellishment of what I ever wanted. It's much better than what it could have been.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that ability to surprise others or surprise ourselves, to me is one of the magics of the power of design. Because even myself, when I'm designing something, first is an idea in your mind, just this abstract thought, and then you put it on paper. Oh yeah, there are these lines, and you're imagining this built environment, but it's just it's a paper, it's a picture, it's a rendering. But when I go and see it and I experience a space that one time was an idea in my mind, that every time, to me, that's a magical situation, because like, oh my God, I thought about this. And it's interesting because it's never how I imagine it. It's
really?
It's always better. It's always better. The other thing that I realize is that I'm very generous with my space planning. Like when I imagine in spaces, I'm always very scared that things are gonna be tight. I don't like tight spaces. So I'm always make sure that things are the proper size, and when I go there, I'm like, oh my God, this feels much better than what I thought. Man, this is amazing.
I always say it's like Christmas. My wife and I we bought a house that we knew we were going to remodel, and we tore it apart. I mean, there's nothing left, and we really drove the design, and the architect helped us quite a bit, but a lot of what we envisioned, he put on paper.
Yeah.
So it was like, after he finished the design, we started construction. I'm like, oh man, do we know what we were doing? I mean, we really drove the design of this house, but we don't know what it's going to end up feeling like.
Right.
And I tell Laura, it's a little bit like Christmas morning. You wake up and you don't know what you're gonna find when you open the box, and I don't know what I'm gonna find after you've designed and spent millions of dollars on a project. And then how's it actually going to feel? How's it going to function? How are people going to interact? Is it going to be conducive to conversation? Are people going to feel good walking here?
Yeah.
Or are they going to feel like, everybody's over listening to my conversation? I don't know. There's just chemistry that happens that you can't put on paper until you actually build it and it's functioning.
Yes. And that's something that for you and I, or people within our industry, we kind of have we don't know how it's going to be, but we have an idea. So I always find very challenging, like let's say, as an architect, I'm working with somebody in a different profession. It could be a commercial or residential project that I know that when they look at a floor plan, they have no idea what they're looking at. And they're making decisions based on something that is way beyond what is not what they think it is. So it's very hard to have those conversations because the fact that it looks like that doesn't mean that it's like that. And the other thing is that when you experience the built environment, it's all your senses experience it. So sometimes you can, when you show, let's say, a material for a project and you show somebody, hey, this is the wood or this is the tile. There is no way your brain can imagine the tile on the floor on the whole room.
That's right.
If you just see one little sample, it's like, okay, but your brain cannot evaluate that. It's impossible. That's one of the things that I like, at least, technology now with virtual reality and things like that. Then when you put on the goggles, you can at least be a little bit closer to that. It's still a long ways, but now at least your brain is experiencing a space and you have a better sense of how it's going to feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be nice to have that virtual reality or augmented reality for life. But, what we're saying about design and designing a space, I'm not trying to be too philosophical here, but it really is. I think there's a lot that can be learned from it, where you have a vision for a space or for something a place of shelter that you need to design. And you say, okay, I could envision it being this way. And you just close your eyes for a moment, and then for another moment, maybe you close your eyes for long, and then you start sketching, and then this design develops. And then you pass it on to the engineer, and then the engineer tweaks it and adds this or adds that. And like, well, that's not exactly what I envisioned. And you're adding an element here that is necessary, but I didn't envision it. And then it goes through the whole process. It goes to the contractor, and then it gets built. And where it started, you just wanted a place of shelter for an office tenant or for a house, and just a place for people to live in and to work. And what it ends up becoming may be a little bit different than what you initially started off with.
Right.
And the path it took to get to the reality is a little bit different. And here's where the philosophical side comes in, is that, 35 years ago, where did I envision my life to be? I could tell you it was not in Charlotte, and it was not doing what I'm doing today. And even the path that it took me to get to where I am today, or the path that I took to get to here today, is completely different. Now, there was a vision.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a vision. And that was based on, environment, mentors, people around me, natural inclinations, desires, and all that I wanted to be something in real estate, something in construction. But where I end up is completely different. I'll tell you, it's blown me away every time I think about where I am today compared to even what I could have become.
Yeah.
So in a sense, that's my life is a bit like you designing or me envisioning something for Station West, for example.
Sure.
I had a vision, but the path that it took and where it ended up is completely different than what I imagined.
It's like it takes its own life.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we try to control our life, so we're trying to design it, but the design is just step one. There's going to be all many different steps and factors that we have no control of that ended up deciding what the actual result will be.
Yeah, and not, I told you, my faith as a Christian is that it's not a confluence of circumstances, of random circumstances or luck, and this is what gives me comfort.
Yeah.
Because I look around in a very changing world, very dynamic, and perfectly fine with it. But the change is so fast and so rapid, and it could be worrisome sometimes.
Sure.
The other thing that could be worrisome is where's my life going to be in a year from now, in 20 years from now, in tomorrow? And me, with with my faith, it's not circumstances, it's not luck, it's actually divinely ordered steps.
Yeah.
And I believe that God has kind of ordained it, the path, and He knows. And He knows where I am today, where I need to be a year from now, and what visions I have for this project or my family or for my personal life. I could have plans, but as long as I know that He is in control of it,
Sure.
things could come my way that could be challenging, and everybody faces challenges. And there's not somebody that doesn't have a challenge, but it doesn't deter me. The challenges don't deter me because He's set me on this path.
Yeah.
I know where I need to end up, and speed humps on the road, hurdles that I need to jump over. Sometimes it's a barrier. Maybe it's Him telling me, stop, don't go any further. But sometimes it's, you know what, this is just a hurdle and I need to get over it, and you're in perfect control. I'm not in control. I gave up my control to you, and you've got this. And a lot of times, maybe especially as men, we want to have full control of everything. From start to finish, everything is ordered, everything is well designed, and it stays within the box and the framework that we've put together. But in design, that's not the case. Mm-mm. In life, that's not the case. And if I don't let go sometimes, I don't know how. I probably would have gone crazy.
Yeah.
So to realize that there is a God who cares, who loves me, and is not going to let me go down a path that is disastrous. He may teach me along the way, but He's not going to just leave me to the whim and wind of circumstances to just do what it would.
Yeah.
He's in control. And when things seem like they're out of control, out of my control, it's okay. It's going to turn out okay.
Yeah, I've heard where, I don't know who said, but they said, one of the basic human needs is certainty, but the second human need is uncertainty. So, we want to know everything is okay, but if everything is the way we want it to be, then it's going to be so boring, because then we already know there's no way. So the things we have control of, they're so little. I mean, we have control of what we say or how we behave, but the ripple effect of that is just a small effect.
Yeah.
So, I can control what do I eat, how do I behave, what kind of information or food do I consume, who do I talk to, and how. And that's as far. I always feel that I have like 1% control of everything that happens, but I make sure that I do 100% of that 1%.
That's right.
And that will give me certainty. Okay, I did my best. What happens from here on, I'm good with the outcome because I have no control.
Yes,
it's impossible. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. The hard things in life that we still worry. So if I was so good at relinquishing control, I would never worry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worry every day about something because things don't go the way I thought they should be or the way I wanted to be, but they're never going to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, worry doesn't get you very far.
No.
They say it's like a rocking chair. You're always doing something, but you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think just being able to adapt and adjust to, hey, yeah, this worries me, this concerns me a little bit. Let me set it aside. It's a worry. I'm gonna set it on the worry pile.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. In my experience, most of the time, it goes away.
And what's crazy about it is that worry is just like a negative future that we made up in our mind. Yeah. It doesn't even exist. It may not happen.
That's right.
But for some reason, we default to the negative outcome, right? If somebody calls and like, oh my God, what happened, right? Or, somebody that you haven't talked about with you haven't talked with a lot in a long time. They're like, hey man, I need to call you. Like, oh my God, what happened? Immediately. Why? There is no way to think about in a negative way, but by default,
Yeah.
we create those negative scenarios in our mind that are completely unnecessary.
Yeah. It's worry is something that is just part of our human nature, and I think the difference between somebody that knows how to handle it and somebody that doesn't is, and not that somebody knows and they're expert at it, but is knowing how to respond to the worry. Worry is just gonna happen.
That's right.
So learning how to compartmentalize it and say, all right, this is the worry. I'm just gonna park it.
Yeah.
Write it down. Make sure you have a note of it, because you're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that issue that was worrying you. But when the thought comes to me, I say, well, you know what? I already wrote down the issue that's worrying me, and I'm gonna deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna deal with it in 6 weeks, and then start writing lists of how I'm gonna resolve it.
Yeah. One of the things I sometimes try to do is, since it's a thing that doesn't exist because we're waking it up in our minds, just think the opposite.
Yeah.
I say, oh no, you know what? It's gonna go great, and at least instead of write down the worry, write the reasons why it's gonna go the opposite way.
Yeah.
The positive way.
Yeah.
And let your state of mind and how you feel be based on that positive outcome. And I think that's one of the things about having goals in life. I think it's important to have positive goals, because it's a positive future outcome that you're working towards, so that makes you feel good about doing that. That may not happen because we don't have control of that. My goals, they're there, but they may never happen. Mm-hmm. But that fits the day-to-day positivity, state of mind, attitude that is positive. So the actions are a response to that positive thinking about the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And, people, particularly, it was a while ago that a lot of books were written about the power of positive thinking and all that. Yeah, nothing against it, but just mere positive thinking doesn't fix a problem. And I think you've touched on this. It's thinking positively about a solution is what can get you somewhere. But just saying, hey, I'm just going to think good thoughts about this problem, which it is a problem, and to just whitewash it and say, hey, it's not a problem, or I'm going to think positively about this problem. Sure, the glass is half full mentality is good, and that's a good start. But just thinking hard, positive thoughts about a situation is not going to fix a situation. Yeah, it's thinking about positive solutions to a problem.
Right. Yeah, I always see it as sometimes if I have to face a critical decision or solve a problem, what's the best state of mind to think about that? And being worried is not that one.
Yeah, that's right.
In worriness, I don't think I feel creative or innovative or excited. So it's a hard place to work from. So when you work on being on the other side, I feel that there is more room to be, relax, analyze things. You still might be making the wrong decision, but at least you feel better as you do it, on that specific moment in time. Tell me, Joe, so, you have this life so busy doing this amazing project that, I really like. I've been there 2 times and want to go back. How do you do in your daily life to keep learning, to keep growing, personally and professionally?
Yeah, I thought about that. Professionally, that's the easy part. Personally, that's the more challenging one. But I think the one thing that I need for both is a little bit of humility and a whole lot of patience. Humility to realize that I'm still learning, I'm still growing, And if I consider myself an expert in something, I could still learn from someone else, whether they're an expert in that field or not. I could still learn from them. That's that little bit of humility and then patience to actually pause. Maybe the person that is cleaning my office has something to teach me about my business or about my life or about how to treat my children or my wife and how to respond to situations. So a little bit of patience to get to know people and to pause and talk to people and goes a long way in learning. But yeah, humility absolutely is necessary in my opinion, that you can't learn if you know it all.
Right.
Professionally, I like, very cliche, but it's surround yourself with people that are smart and that are smarter than you in many ways, that are experts in what they do. And, whether it's a good accountant or a good attorney or a good architect or a good designer, to work with these folks, to build a good team around me is my number one priority from day one since I've been in business to today. I'm always wanting to find that one critical person that or firm or group of individuals that can teach me. And I'm always asking questions. Probably annoys a lot of people, whether it's my contractor or my architect. Why do you do it that way? What does the code say about this? Can we do it a little differently? Do I have to do it this way? And always asking questions that in my mind are genius, but to them it's like, no, Joe, you can't do that. Joe, you're thinking way outside the box here. Let's just bring it down. And then sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes every once in a while, every 25 times, they say, yeah, maybe we could incorporate this. And then they start looking into it and it solves a problem that either makes a project better or saves money here or whatever. So I'm always asking questions to learn and trying to figure out how to do things better, and not my own imagination, but by asking my professional partners. So, I'm a member of the Urban Land Institute. So that's among some of the, just to network with people that are smart, that know what they're doing, that have more experience than me, other developers. I don't like to hold cards close to my chest and cover things up from my competitors. I rather have a cup of coffee with another developer and talk to them about the challenges of my project, rather than, how good my project is and the successes of my project. Because I learn more from my mistakes and the challenges than I do from the successes. If I did something and it worked out well, great, good for you.
Yeah.
Do it again. That's easy to repeat. But the harder challenge is, hey, this did not work out last time, Joe. So how are you going to fix it next time?
Yeah.
So then you try again. So, and don't just try again on your own. My dad, one thing that he's always emphasizing is let the experts do their thing. They know, they've seen more.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity to share their expertise and to resolve their problem. You're an expert. You could be an expert in one thing, but you can't be an expert in everything. So learning from my colleagues.
Yeah, that's a good advice.
And then on the personal level, again, it takes that humility probably more than anything, and the patience. I learned from my kids. I learned from my wife. I learned from my friends when they ask questions or when they make mistakes. And then, every once in a while I look at Laura and say, hey, I wonder why my kid just did that when we clearly said don't do it. And then I say, before you get angry or upset at them, say, you know what? I'm like that so many times.
Sure.
Where I know better and I was told not to do it this way and I still did it. So it's a learning experience when my kids do something good or do something bad. So just pause, ponder, and just reflect on it. Talk about it with my wife or talk about it with someone else and say, you know what? This is what they did, and this is what I'm learning from it.
Yeah, and many times all they're doing is just imitating our behavior because we're the one teaching them how to behave and what to say. So many times I find myself telling my kids something that I should be telling myself. I'm like, they're acting like that because I behave like that.
Yeah.
They learn that behavior from me. And when I see it exteriorized, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then I criticize them. And I should be criticizing myself because I was the one who put that in there.
Absolutely. And there, again, being humble enough to learn from others that are not professional at what they're doing, whether it's a kid or somebody who's not an expert in real estate, to learn from them.
How does the power of design impact who you are and what you do?
Well, the power of design is just, it's all around us. It's nature is beautifully designed, and our environment is a masterpiece. And the amazing thing is God said it and it came into existence, and it not just did it come into existence, but it's an ecosystem that feeds off each other. And so it touches every part of my life. You know, my body is designed to function a certain way. The shape of my face is designed not just for me, but for others to see it and to say, hey, he's ugly, or hey, he's okay. So how does it touch me? I mean, design, we're sitting in a design building. I'm sitting on a design chair, and the microphone is well designed. It's not falling apart. So I mean, design, the power of design is integral to every aspect of life. And to be a designer of sorts as a developer, I think is that's humbling, that you're designing something that others can benefit from.
Yeah.
You envision something, and with the help of many experts, bring it to reality and let somebody enjoy it. That's really cool. I think that's whether you're a doctor, you're designing a fix for somebody's health problem, or you're a technology guy that's designing a software to make somebody's heart function, or you're designing a building for somebody to live in and work in, is fascinating. And it goes back to that diversity thing. I don't look at my job like it's the end all and be all. Like, it's not what I'm designing is not for me. It's not to write my name on it and say, hey, Joe did this. I'm designing something, I'm building something so that others could benefit from it. And people from all walks of life, diversity, whether they're rich or poor, black or white, Egyptian or Canadian, doesn't matter who, a kid or an older person, designing something that is not for me. It's for everyone, for this generation and the next generation.
Yeah, I say that one of the missions of my farms, one of the things that we believe is that we believe in the power of design to enhance our experience of life. So any human, when you experience great design, you have a great experience of life at that moment in time.
And it goes beyond what you and I could think of, because like we were saying earlier, you design something, and how it actually functions, the chemistry of how it's going to function in this life and in 100 years from now, when the building that you design is used as something completely different, you have your fingerprint in it, and and it's not really up to you how it's going to actually function well or not.
Yeah, it takes life of its own. Well, Joe, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time and the conversation. I'm very inspired by your story and excited by all the things that you're doing. I think you're gonna do many more amazing things. You're doing a great job for our community, for our city, for our built environment, and I look forward to stay in touch.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.